They said Tommy Norris had already played his last card. Well, somebody forgot to tell Tommy that. The desert does not forgive weakness. It never has. Out in the West Texas plains, where the sun beats down like a punishment and the wind carries the smell of money and danger in equal measure, empires are not built by careful men. They are built by stubborn ones. And Tommy Norris, that man is the most stubborn thing standing between Midland and the Mexican border. Now, if you thought last season left things messy, honey, you have not seen anything yet. Because Season 3 of Landman does not ease you in gently. It grabs you by the collar on the very first frame and does not let go. We are talking bigger stakes, darker enemies, and a family that is held together with nothing but pride and prayer at this point. MTech Oil is not just a company anymore. It is a battlefield, and everybody wants a piece of it. So let us talk about where things actually stand. MTech has been growing, steadily, quietly, the kind of growth that turns heads in boardrooms and makes rivals lose sleep. Tommy has been playing it smart, keeping his cards close, expanding the operation without making too much noise. But here's the thing about oil money. You can try to be quiet about it all you want. The moment the numbers get big enough, the silence ends for you. And somebody just ended it for Tommy Norris in the most aggressive way possible. A late-night phone call. That is how it starts. Not a meeting, not a formal letter, not even a proper introduction. Just a voice on the other end of the line, smooth and cold, the kind of voice that has never once raised itself because it has never needed to. Victor Kane, a name that means absolutely nothing to the farmers out on those dusty lease roads, but means everything to anyone who has ever watched serious money move across this country. Kane does not call unless billions are involved. And when he calls you personally at midnight with an offer that sounds almost too reasonable, that is not opportunity knocking, that is a trap being set. Very carefully, very patiently. The offer on the table is a partnership with a cutting-edge tech firm. Artificial intelligence for smarter drilling, 40% more output, dramatically lower costs, and the kind of efficiency that would make MTech completely untouchable in the Permian Basin. On paper, it is the most beautiful thing Tommy has ever read. In reality, it is the most dangerous document in his office, because nothing in this business comes without strings. And Kane's strings have strings. Meanwhile, back at headquarters, Rebecca is already pacing. If you have been watching this show from the beginning, you know Rebecca is the person Tommy should have listened to every single time he did not. She is sharper than anyone in that room gives her credit for, and she has been with MTech through every disaster, every near collapse, every moment when the whole thing almost fell apart. She is not excited about this deal. She is not celebrating. She is pacing, and when Rebecca paces, it means the room should be worried. She says the Kane deal could make them untouchable, but she says it the way you warn someone about a stove, not the way you invite them to dinner. And then there is the family. Oh, the family. Angela is at home, tired in the way that only oil wives understand, the kind of tired that sleep does not fix. She has watched her husband build this empire brick by brick, and she knows better than anyone that every new brick adds weight to something that is already leaning. Their daughter is going about her life, trying to be a normal teenager in a household that has never once been normal. And Cooper, the son, the one studying environmental science at college, the one who texts his father things like, "Maybe it is time to walk away," is becoming the loudest conscience in a family that is very good at ignoring its conscience. Cooper is not wrong, by the way. That is what makes it complicated. The planet argument, the clean energy argument, the oil days are numbered argument. None of that is wrong, but Tommy Norris is a man built entirely for the world he is already in, and asking him to abandon MTech is like asking the desert to apologize for the heat. It is simply not in his nature. So here is what we have in the first act of this season. A midnight deal that smells like a setup. A rival company called Black Ridge Energy that is already moving on the new lease sites, offering double what MTech proposed to the local landowners. A slick operator named Harlan Crow showing up with a shiny SUV and a handshake that means absolutely nothing good. A family that is quietly cracking under pressure. And somewhere in the background, a mysterious group with enough reach to make a business card feel like a threat. Tommy secures the farmers that afternoon. He shows them the tech. He talks straight, and he wins the room the way he always does, on reputation and nerve alone. Harlan drives off defeated, but not before leaning in close and delivering a whisper that lands heavier than a shout. "Watch your back, Norris." It is the kind of line that sounds like a movie villain, but lands like a real warning when it comes from a man who plays as dirty as Harlan Crow. And just when Tommy thinks he has bought himself a moment to breathe, Angela calls. Their daughter was followed home from school by a black sedan with no license plates. So here is what you need to ask yourself right now. If Harlan Crow is bold enough to threaten Tommy to his face in front of witnesses, and bold enough to follow a child home from school on the very same day, what exactly is he planning to do when Tommy is not watching? And more importantly, is Harlan Crow even the one calling the shots here? Or is he just the face on a machine that someone far more dangerous is running from a very safe distance? The black sedan was gone by the time Tommy got home, but fear does not leave with the car. It settles into the walls of a house, sits at the dinner table, follows the kids up the stairs, and into their beds at night. Angela had the children inside and the doors locked, but no lock in the world was going to fix what Tommy saw in her eyes when he walked through that front door. This was not the worried look of a woman stressed about bills or schedules. This was the look of a woman who had just realized that the life her husband was building could also be the life that destroyed them. And Tommy knew it. He kissed her forehead, said the things husbands say when they do not have real answers yet, and then his phone buzzed. Because of course it did. Because the oil business does not care about your family moment. It never has, and it never will. Rebecca's voice on the other end was steady, but only barely. Someone had tampered with the pressure valves on the equipment at the New Midland site. Not loosened by accident, not worn down by weather or time. Loosened on purpose, with precision, by someone who knew exactly which valves to touch and exactly how much to loosen them before the whole rig became a catastrophe. If the crew had not caught it before the morning shift started drilling, there would have been a blowout by sunrise. We are not talking about a setback. We are talking about men dying. We are talking about a fireball visible from 3 counties over. We are talking about the kind of disaster that ends companies and ends careers and ends lives, all before the first cup of coffee is poured. Somebody out there was not just trying to slow MTech down. They were willing to kill to do it. Tommy was back in his truck before Rebecca finished her sentence. The drive out to the site felt different this time. Every pair of headlights in the rearview mirror felt like a tail. Every shadow on the roadside felt like it was watching. This is what targeted intimidation does to a person. It does not have to be everywhere. It just has to make you feel like it is. And whoever was running this operation was very good at making Tommy Norris feel exactly that. When he arrived at the rig, the lights were blazing and the crew was shaken in that quiet way that roughnecks get shaken. Not crying, not panicking, just very still and very serious. Because men who work on drilling rigs understand better than most people exactly how quickly things can go wrong out there. Rebecca laid the damaged valve parts out like evidence at a crime scene, and that is essentially what it was. Professional work. Calculated, not random vandalism, not a disgruntled worker with a wrench and a grudge. This was someone with technical knowledge, someone who had access to that site, and someone who was connected to people with a very clear motive for wanting MTech's expansion to fail spectacularly and publicly. Tommy looked at those parts and felt something shift inside him. He had dealt with dirty competitors before. He had dealt with cartel pressure, with crooked lawyers, with regulators who were on somebody else's payroll. But this was different. This was an escalation. And escalation in the oil fields of West Texas does not stop at property damage. He called Victor Kane right there on the site, standing under the rig lights with oil and metal heavy in the night air. Kane answered on the second ring, which was itself a kind of tell, because men like Kane do not answer quickly unless they already know why you are calling. The conversation was short and deeply unsatisfying in the way that all conversations with powerful men tend to be when you actually need something from them. Kane acknowledged the threats. He acknowledged the family situation. He said he would send people. He said expansion comes with teeth, as if that were wisdom instead of a warning dressed up as wisdom. And Tommy, who is smart enough to read a room even when the room is a phone call at midnight, dawn came the way it always does in West Texas, sudden and bright and completely indifferent to what happened the night before. Tommy drove home, got 90 minutes of something that was technically sleep, and was back at headquarters before most of his team had finished their first coffee. He had a decision to make, and he had decided. MTech was not going to sit and absorb hits. MTech was going on the offensive. Rebecca was already there with security reports and fresh intelligence on Blackridge's finances, and what she had found was the first real piece of good news in 48 hours. Blackridge was overextended. They had borrowed aggressively to compete on those lease negotiations, and their last two wells had come up completely dry. They were bleeding money and covering it up with arrogance and intimidation because that is what companies do when they are losing but cannot afford to look like it. Harlan Crow's swagger was a performance, and performances have endings. But then the lobby called up, and the morning got complicated again. A woman, tall, composed, somewhere in her 40s, dressed in the kind of quiet, expensive way that signals serious money without announcing it. Elena Vargas. She walked into the MTech conference room like she had already measured the space and found it acceptable. She carried a thin briefcase and a business card that made the security team step aside without a word, which should tell you everything you need to know about who Elena Vargas actually represents. She did not waste time. She told Tommy her employers had been watching MTech's growth with great interest. She said his expansion plans were ambitious, perhaps too ambitious for one man to manage alone. She offered protection for his family and his operations in exchange for a modest stake in the new fields. Now let us pause right here, because this moment deserves full attention. Elena Vargas just walked into Tommy Norris's building uninvited and offered him exactly what he needed most at his most vulnerable moment. Think about the timing on that. His daughter was followed yesterday. His rig was sabotaged last night. And today, before he has even had a chance to investigate either incident properly, a representative from a shadowy organization shows up with a ready-made solution. Either the Alliance has extraordinary intelligence gathering abilities, or they already knew those things were going to happen before they happened. Neither option is reassuring. Both options are terrifying. Tommy told her he does not take partners who hide in the shadows. It was the right answer, and he delivered it with the right amount of steel in his voice. Elena stood up slowly, the way people stand up when they are not actually leaving, just repositioning. And then she said very quietly and very politely that accidents happen quickly in the oil fields and that children are so fragile. She left a card on the table with no company name, just a phone number and one word: Alliance. And she walked out of the building the same way she walked in, like she owned it, like she had already decided how this ends. Rebecca ran in seconds later asking who that was. Tommy slid the card across the table and said, "Somebody who just threatened my kids in a very polite way." And that right there is the line that tells you exactly what Season 3 of Landman is actually about. Because it is one thing to have enemies who come at you loud and obvious, like Harlan Crow with his smirking phone calls and his black SUVs. It is something else entirely to have enemies who smile while they threaten you, who offer help with one hand and hold a knife with the other, and who are organized and patient and connected enough to know your daughter's school schedule before you have even filed the lease paperwork on your new fields. Tommy Norris is now standing at the center of a war with 3 different fronts. Blackridge coming at him from the outside with money and muscle. Victor Kane pulling strings from somewhere above him with motives that have not been fully revealed. And now the Alliance, this nameless, faceless group that has just made it crystal clear they can reach his family whenever they choose. So tell me something. If the people threatening your children are polished enough to make it sound like a courtesy call, and connected enough to walk past your security with a business card, and patient enough to wait until your most vulnerable moment to introduce themselves, exactly how long do you think Tommy Norris has before one of these 3 enemies stops playing the long game and decides to end this quickly?